of time of the exposure. And I just started falling in love with the chemical process and the whole process, the physics of it. So I started making my own cameras after I experimented with Brian's. And the first cameras were all experimental. All the parts on this camera, this is called the wood camera. This camera, all the parts I found in Death Valley mine shafts. So all the copper, the steel, the wood, everything in the camera, I found in mine shafts. This camera was, like I said, it was an exploring pinhole photography and how it works. This camera actually has a frame that pulls in and out of the pinhole, which I don't know if you can see, there's a dragonfly right in the middle of the camera. That's between two pieces of acrylic. So between the two pieces of acrylic, I could float different objects and shoot through it. And since pinhole, the focus is infinite, the object in front of the pinhole will be just as in focus as farther away. And there's the back of it. There was a big beetle that I found, so I put the beetle in the back of the camera. And this is what the image will look like. So this butterfly is actually between those two pieces of acrylic that's mounted in front of the camera. And actually it's the World Trade Center in the background there. And then that same butterfly back in Tucson. So, you know, I was just really exploring with the first cameras, and this was another exploratory mission. I had looked around on the internet and I tried to find somebody who's actually doing underwater pinhole photography. And I was actually inspired by a National Geographic show where there was scuba divers going underneath the polar ice caps. And I was fascinated how they looked like they were just floating in space because there wasn't the telltale signs of underwater photography. You know, the lights coming through the water, you see that, you know, shimmering. And I thought, if I do long exposure underwater photography, I could get the same effect because all those light beams will just meld together and it'll just become one solid image. So I made this camera. It took probably about 8 months to machine out of a solid brick of forged aluminum. There's actually a dark slide that comes down in front of the pinhole. There's acrylic with an O-ring gasket that covers the pinhole so no water gets in. And then at the very top of it is the plate that seals the 4x5 film inside. And it's a pain in the ass to use, actually, because it's only good for one shot. The thing weighs 30 pounds. You have to bring a tripod. You have to bring a mesh bag to fill with rocks as an anchor because any tide will mess up your shot. You have to bring a salvage lift bag to attach to the top of it to bring it back to the surface. And then you got to swim with all that gear. And the very first shot I did was actually of a sunken ship a quarter mile off the coast of Catalina in California. This is the back of the camera. It ended up being the first real theme kind of camera, or a camera that had a name, really. This is called Yimiya, which is a Santeria goddess of the ocean. And when I was in Los Angeles, I was brought up with Santeria in my family. My aunt and my mom and my grandmother would go see Santeros. And so this is the Santeria goddess in the back of the camera. This is the camera underwater off the coast of Catalina. And this is the very first shot I told you about. To get this photo, I actually had to board a ship in Los Angeles, take it to Catalina, unload all my gear, stay at a hotel, get up the next morning, bring all the gear to the coast, swam out, dove down. Well, actually, first you send the camera down by itself, attached to the lift bag. And you're hopefully you navigated correctly so that it's near the ship that you want to photograph. So I deflated the lift bag. I saw the camera just disappear in this. And then I started diving down, and I got down to 80 feet and then 90 feet. And all of a sudden I was at 110 feet, which is a past recreational diving. And then my computer started screaming at me that I was way too deep. And then I found the camera with the tripod legs out, the lift bag holding up the top of the camera, and it looked like the lunar lander on the bottom of the ocean, my whole setup. So then I put some air in the lift bag. I swam to the deck of the sunken ship. I started the exposure because I was trying to calculate the exposure time, but I had nitrogen narcosis, which is I was on the bottom of the ocean way too long and too much nitrogen is my body. So it felt like I had 6 shots of whiskey. And I'm drawing just little flowers in my calculating thing. So I decided, screw it. I went back up to the surface. I had to do decompression stops because, like I said, I would have got bends otherwise. Swam back to shore, swapped out tanks because I only had 50 pounds of air out of the 3,000 that I started with. Swam back out, had to find the camera again at the bottom of the ocean, shut the exposure, put the bag back on, swam back, went back to the hotel, took the ship back, developed the film the next day, and I'm like, hey, cool, it worked. So this is the very first shot I ever did with the camera. 3 days and almost a case of bends to get it. After that, I started doing photo shoots in public aquariums. This is in the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They let me scuba dive in it for 2 days and do photo shoots for a book. This is, it was actually kind of wild. It was the most public photo shoot I ever did. And I was 30 feet underwater. The woman at the mic actually was able to talk to me because I had it's called an AGA mask. So I had a speaker in my mask. I could talk to the crowd and tell them what I was doing. And it was a fun event. And these are some of the photos from inside the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And you can see it looks otherworldly rather than typical underwater photography. And you get, since it was long exposure, you get some like really kind of softness with the kelp, but also that orange spot at the bottom. That was a really pissed off Garibaldi fish that was bright orange. And I was by his nest, so he wasn't happy. Another experiment after that, which it kind of came about with a friend of mine who was just telling me I couldn't do something. And so I had an idea to make a camera. I was like, what if I made a camera out of a human skull and got it to see again? And this friend of mine said, basically, I was going to go to hell if I did that, and I can't do that. So of course, I went and did it. I ended up having a friend who had a box of bones in his attic in England. And because his uncle at the turn of the century was studying to be a doctor, and back then you had to have a full set of bones to be a doctor. So it was your study kit. So I told him, what I wanted to do, and he shipped the skull to me. And I was really intrigued by the patina of the skull, like the aging of the skull. The texture on it was just beautiful. And so I really the project started evolving into the study of the beauty of decay and who says decay is wrong or bad or something you shouldn't have in your life. It's just another life process, and it's just part of a process, and this skull was going through a process. So what I did is I ended up cutting the skull in half to make it into a camera. I made a back plate for the front of the skull that is the 4x5 film holder. So the film goes down through the top, and the third eye is the pinhole, where you can see the pinhole right there. So the light enters the third eye of the skull and makes an image on the 4x5 film inside. And actually, those are precious gemstones with sterling silver around the bendy part of the skull. And there's the side. You could see the shock, or those gold pieces are what pulls the film back together and locks in the film. And with this project, I started taking it around 2 different things to study decay, but I really started falling in love with Wonder Valley, California, which is outside Joshua Tree. There's hundreds and hundreds of abandoned homesteads out there. Because in the 50s and 60s, if you built a 12 by 20 foot home, you got 5 acres for free. It didn't matter to a lot of people, even though there was no electricity, no water, no sewage, no nothing. But so they'd go build these itty bitty homes, and they got 5 acres for free. a lot of the homes are still filled with people's stuff, and they were just abandoned. I found one home that actually had, alarm clock on the table and bills from 1962, with a big lazy boy recliner, and half the ceiling was caved in. This is the inside of one of the homes. A lot of them are trash, the ones that are closer by the road. People go through them, they shoot them up, and I like to photograph them. Kitchen. Waiting for an exposure. And this is a scan of a negative of from the camera skull, or the skull camera. And this is what the finished prints look like. This is 40 by 45. It's on multiple sheets of 8 by 10, and then with one 11 by 14 in the middle. And what I do is I collect artifacts from around the home. So you see the frame, I made a steel frame, and then all those objects are actually artifacts that I find laying all around the home to include into the finished piece. There's a close-up. And then I'll photograph the inside. This is actually that house I told you about that has the bills on the counter there from 1962. All the books are still on the shelf. And that's what the finished print looked like. So all the artifacts around there are from wallpaper, just things I found on the floor that were just all over the place inside the abandoned homestead. And this is an installation I did of the project. This was at the TAM, Torrance Art Museum, last year. And so what I usually do, because I had I was brought up a good Catholic boy, but with Santeria, I had a lot of influence from Catholicism. I didn't even know I was doing this at first, but I created all my museum installations as a Catholic shrine without even really knowing. You always have like the Godhead at the top of the installation, the sacrament in the middle, and there's always a plumb bob that hangs down below, which is the like the altar stone that's underneath the altar in the Catholic Church. And then the photographs the camera took, the sacrament, are the photographs that flank the actual image. I mean, flank the camera itself. And I always include the camera in with the photographs it shot, because I see it as one piece. The camera's made to study decay, and this whole entire project is about decay. So the photos and the camera have the same value, basically, for the installation and the message. I made another skull camera a few years later. I was in Beijing, and there was a bunch of skulls being sold on the curb, and they were pillaged from Tibetan monasteries. And I have a friend in San Francisco his name's Tashi. He's a Tibetan Lama in exile. And I said, Tashi, you want me to buy these things? I could buy them and send them back to you. And he's like, nah, don't waste your money. And I said, but these are Tibetan Lama skulls. And he said, no, the Lama's gone. He said, the skull has the same relevance as a bird flying over and losing a feather. The feather's not the bird. And so I told him I had an idea for a project to build a camera that is a stereo camera through the eyes of the skull itself, and we'll see in 3D. And I wanted to model it after Yama, which in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Yama has seen all of your life. He's seen everything. So to make a skull that could see again, I thought Yama would be perfect for that. This skull it's turquoise all around the skull. It actually has some Arizona Kingman turquoise in it. That's a huge ruby in the middle of the forehead. The eyes I actually created out of bronze, the eyelids, silver eyeballs, and then pure gold pupils. The kit's actually pneumatic, so there's an air tank in the middle. You see that silver part with air hoses coming down. So you hit a switch underneath the jaw, and 2 pneumatic pistons open up the skull and split it, and then you put the 4x5 film in, and then hit the switch again, and it closes around the film. The back of the camera, you see there's a section there that has little beads hanging. There's a metal plate that slides into the back of the camera. You slide in the plate, which has a finished print on it, and it turns on 2 lights, and then you look into the back, the optical department of the skull, and you see a 3D image in the optical department of the skull that the camera, the eyes actually saw. And a close-up of some of the turquoise. There's an opal in there too. And there's the pupils, or the pinhole, which is, like I said, it's pure gold with silver and then bronze. And this was a photo shoot. The series I'm doing with it is what I think modern incarnations of deities and icons would look like today. So this was my photo shoot of Sainte Marguerite Bourgeois. She's the patron saint of Montreal. And so we did this right in the street of Montreal. And we you know, on what you don't see is on the backside, there's a huge crowd because, you know, there's a guy with a head on a tripod, you know, in the street of Montreal. And it was really interesting. You know, I'm from LA, where if you try to do a photo shoot in LA on the street, you have cops around you. It's like, where's your permits? What are you doing? 2 Montreal cops come up and they're like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm doing a photo shoot. Is that okay? And they said, yes, could we watch? And I'm like, yeah, come on in. And so it was a really lovely day. And Marguerite Bourgeois, she was the patron saint of Montreal because she started all the orphanages in Montreal, where like a modern incarnation just wouldn't have the respect that Marguerite Bourgeois did back in the 1800s. And this is the finished print. You can kind of see how it's offset. Like if you look at the top of her head compared to the left side, you know, it's offset because each pinhole is 3 1/4 inches off from each other. And so that's what gives the depth to it. This is modern incarnation of the Hindu goddess Kali. And this is it's a pretty large print. It's 40 by 48, I think. And I also make all my own frames. I kind of like to make everything, from cameras to the frames. But yeah, I make the whole installation, the frames, and the whole shot. They're not as nice as Richard's frames, but working on it. And this is the Hindu god Brahma. And this is the installation for it. So again, you know, I have the Godhead at the top, the sacrament in the middle, plumb bob down below, which is the grounding feature of it. This is at a museum right now in New York at Artisan Works, which is in Rochester, New York. Then the project started getting a little more personal. This one's called Untouchable. This was inspired by one of my best friends who has actually just visited it, Milana and I, about 2 weeks ago. I used to do a lot of climbing with him, and we were surfing one day in Hawaii, and he came to me and he said, Wayne, I want you to know that I have rubber gloves in my surf bag in case I get cut up, because we were surfing a reef that was really nasty, and it just had fire coral all over the place and would just chew you up. And I said, well, you know, I don't understand why. I go, you know, he goes, well, I found out I'm HIV positive. And this was in a time when it was still a death sentence. You know, it's manageable now, but back then it wasn't. And listening to his stories of how he was put into an us and them category, how he was shunned by his own community. So he started hanging out with the gay community, even though he was straight, and got shunned by the gay community because he wasn't gay, but he was still HIV positive. So there was all these levels of us and them, and just separating him into different communities. And so I wanted to study that. So I made this camera. It actually has his HIV positive blood in the camera, in these cylinders on the side. I made a pump out of a rare earth magnet that pumps the blood, circulates through the camera, and then goes in front of the pinhole between 2 pieces of acrylic that are 5/1000 of an inch thick. And I did a lot of experimenting with my own blood, and I found with the right combination of sodium chloride 0.9% and heparin and potassium cyanide, I could get a red tone and light restriction that was the same as a number 25 red filter. So I was able to really calculate my exposure times easily. And yeah, and this camera took about a year to make. And what's been fun about these cameras too is I love the engineering. I love trying to figure out how everything is going to work, but you don't know until you get some film back. And this camera really surprised me. It had this really interesting vignetting. A lot of my models I photographed ended up with like a halo around them from the blood that's in it. So with this camera, I started traveling and photographing people all over the world with HIV and AIDS. And that was the focus of the camera, is to photograph people, connect with people, learn from people, learn their stories with blood that has become such a prominent part of their life. This is the very first photograph I did. This is of David, my blood donor, through his own blood. This is a gelatin silver print. This was at a photo shoot in Los Angeles. This mother and daughter were both HIV positive. The exposure times are about 45 seconds, and that is a long time just to freeze. But it's also a long time to think about what you've gone through, who you lost, how much HIV has affected you and your community and loved ones. And so many times people would just start breaking down and crying. And I mean, it was just a really, really heartfelt experience through every photo shoot. And this is what the finished prints look like. So all the red and the color tones that you see are from the HIV blood. That's the filter in front of the pinhole. And then again with an installation. So the camera's in the middle, which is, and then the sacrament is below on this one, which is 2 quart bottles of HIV positive blood. Actually, that last shot was at Artisan Works in New York. This was installation at Shreveport Museum of Art, art space. And then the projects also took even more of a personal turn. I've always been really political. I grew up in Los Angeles, a little punk rock kid, going to a lot of political rallies, and I was a big political activist. Got in trouble a few times in my teens. I was really, really taken by the Syrian refugee crisis. And so I started just learning what I can about what was going on. So I created a camera to actually go to Lesbos and connect. And this is the camera. And it was kind of amazing. This is after, I don't know, like 15 years of doing what I do. I started making this project, people started finding out, and all of a sudden all these artifacts start coming from people. They're like, yeah, this was my dad's, you know, this and this happened to him. You know, would you like this for the project? For instance, like in the side of the camera, there's a little window. A woman actually talked to her dad about this project, Us and Them, and he gave her body parts he took off Viet Cong that he killed in the Vietnam War. He kept these body parts with him his whole life. He didn't know what to do with him. He couldn't bury them. He couldn't just throw them away. He felt responsible for them because his commander trained him and everybody in his platoon that the people they killed were less than dogs. They were nothing. And so it was such a strong us and them that he thought, giving me those pieces to put in the camera to travel to these situations of us and them would help bring that energy and understanding that impact of the damage of us and them could create. Another interesting artifact is on the front gate here is a crucifix. It's the aperture gate. The crucifix, you can't really see it too well there, but on the back of it has a monogram with a gold bezel and it's EB. This was actually Eva Braun's personal crucifix, Hitler's wife or girlfriend. And, you know, a lot of people see the crucifix on the front and they're like, oh, it's Jesus, yay. But everything has a story. Everything has an energy. Everything has, you know, more depth to it. You just got to be able to be open to looking at the depth of what's there. So I went to Lesbos. Whenever I work on a project, I generally volunteer first. I started working with an agency, an NGO that was running Kara Tepe, which is one of the big Syrian refugee camps. This is Kara Tepe at night. I a lot of times like to travel with my daughter. She was 12 years old on this trip, and it's my daughter Tara. And she would work food service in the daytime, and then at night we'd do boat rescues. Sometimes we'd get 5,000 people a night coming from Turkey in rubber boats, and she was in charge of children. So you can see the one child at the very bottom is wrapped in gold. So Tara, if anybody was wet, she'd get the clothes off them, new clothes on, and then wrap them in emergency blankets. That's Tara up there to the right. This is the very first shot I ever did with the camera. It was a little boy. His parents didn't make it across. They were in Turkey. I mean, they didn't pass away. But a lot of the parents will put their children on the boats because they can't afford the $1,300 for themselves. So they would put the children on the boat, and he came across on a boat with just pretty much nothing but children. And he was super excited to do a photo shoot. And what I usually do is I'll take a Polaroid first. This is actually Type 55, which is my all-time favorite film. And I wish I didn't, you know, I wish it was cheaper than like 500 bucks a box on eBay now or something. But what I would do is I would, you know, take a photo of the person and then give them the photo. And for a lot of these people, it was the only thing they owned, because the clothes weren't his. You know, they were given to him just to stay warm, but they don't have a photo of themselves or any other possessions. So this was his photo, shot by the camera on the first day. This is Rakan. I talked to him not long ago. He's from Syria, and he called and he's like, Wayne, I'm Irish now, because he's living in Ireland. But super sweet guy. Smithsonian Magazine did in 2018 a 10-page feature on this whole project, and they interviewed Rakan, and it was just really, really sweet. He was super excited to be in Smithsonian Magazine. This little boy was super excited about Miss Piggy. This one was a dentist. This is in the food tent of Moria. And Moria burnt down recently. I don't know, you probably saw it on the news. Moria was kind of one of the rougher camps, but this woman was a dentist just outside of Damascus, and everything was destroyed. Afghan woman and her baby at Moria. And then after the photo shoots there, I went to the Palestinian territories and spent a bunch of time in the West Bank, and did photo shoots there too. I started to gather, when I go to shoot too, I gather a lot of artifacts when I'm traveling. The barbed wire right there, there's a bunch of barbed wire. This is from the 6-Day War. This is actually in Syria. We crossed over into Syria, and the barbed wire was there. So I took some barbed wire home, and it actually ended up in the back of the camera. This is me in Hebron, in the Palestinian territories. I would go up on people's rooftops because sometimes they throw like broken glass and stuff up there. And so I would find just pieces of broken glass, to make camera parts out of. And so this is the back of the camera. All the glass that's in it is broken glass from the rooftops of the Palestinian territories. Also, there's an armband in the back, you can see with the Star of David on it. That was from World War II. And it actually has a red stamp from the Nazi Party that they were a registered Jew. I mean, that was one of the biggest us and thems in history. After that, went to Standing Rock, spent over 2 months in Standing Rock. Yeah, I love the sign there. DAPL is leaving Standing Rock in your reservation. They didn't really quite leave for quite some time. I ended up working with Ochete Media, which is the Sioux's media group that actually ran the camp. There's about 15 of us. And they gave me actually a digital camera to use, which was an experience. So I got to shoot photos like this. This is the day when 2,000 vets went to the front line to confront the Sheriff's Department and the National Guard. It was another sub-zero day in Standing Rock. This is on the front line. One evening, like at 2 in the morning, a bunch of vets just went and pushed the front line. And what you don't see is on the other side of that barbed wire is guys with machine guns. And the 2 little dots up to the right is National Guardsmen with binoculars. Some of the people I got to meet, I got to hang out with Cornel West quite a bit. He was, I have a lot of respect for this guy. I mean, he had a full-on suit and it was blizzard conditions, and every day he just looked so spiffy and he was just always so happy. Where other celebrities would come in for like a few hours and say they were at Standing Rock, Cornel put in his time and he really put a lot of effort into the camp and you know, connecting with people and communicating with people. This is the first shot I did in Standing Rock. This is of the Sioux, the chief of the Sioux Nation. This is Arvo Looking Horse. And it was just such an honor to photograph him. And it was amazing to have my very first photo shoot in Standing Rock of Arvo Looking Horse. This is a woman, I'm gonna be doing a future project with her. This is Michael. Michael's transgender. And this is an interesting day too. This was Thanksgiving Day in Standing Rock. And all the people at the top of that hill are DAPL enforcers, National Guard, and Sheriff's Department, and other hired guns. They decided to take over a Sioux burial site in the middle of the night. And there was no reason to be there because it was a distance from the pipeline. So the only reason they were there was to antagonize. Later that day, there's actually a river between where I'm standing and the hill. The water protectors built a bridge and started going to the other side of the island and started to take it over. And then they used hoses on us and started hosing everybody down when it was freezing temperatures. Michael is really an amazing person. Michael was telling me how Michael's Navajo and spoke nothing but Dene the whole entire time in Standing Rock. And she was telling me how, actually I don't speak Dene, so this was later after Standing Rock, but how it's two-spirit is what they call transgenderism in a lot of Native American tribes. And it's seen as a gift because you understand both sexes and both sides. You have more of an understanding. So Michael and I, we're going to be doing a project where I'm going to be taking us and them camera and going to reservations all over the US, Canada, and Mexico and photographing transgender Native Americans. This gentleman is actually the Sioux president of the Muslim Sioux Brotherhood. This gentleman's Havasupai. I'm looking rather shaggy. And this is what it looked like a lot of the time, especially like in December. It was just blizzard conditions a lot of the time in sub-zero. And what was great too, like a lot of the other photographers, because I was with a group, the cameras would freeze almost instantly, the batteries. You know, when it's like negative 13 degrees, you pull the camera out, you get just a couple shots, your batteries are really straining, the lenses are just going. I found with my camera, all I need is a big stick. I club it a few times, knocks off all the ice and snow, and I could keep on shooting. This is a day when we're being shot at with rubber bullets and getting gassed. I have also found too that gas masks really warm your face up nicely too. And that truck in the background, that burned on an evening. There was a big battle between DAPL and the water protectors on the front line, and that truck ended up burning. And I ended up getting the VIN number, the VIN tag, and that's part of the camera. My daughter didn't go on this trip, but I brought her home the gas mask. We went out for tacos right when I got home after being gone for 2 months. And she wore the gas mask to the taco shop here in Tucson. A trip I've done a few times now, another Us and Them project, is the Zapatista rebels in Chiapas, Mexico. This was a demonstration by the Zapatista rebels. This was in a camp called Ovantic in Chiapas. This was a meeting I was invited to. This is an indigenous Zapatista representation of indigenous Zapatistas from all over Mexico. They came together for a meeting. The guy with the pipe is Subcomandante Marcos in the middle, and then Subcomandante Moises is the one on the far left who's talking. You always know Marcos because he has this pipe going out all times. This was the first photo shoots. It's really an interesting thing too to spend like weeks with people that are completely masked at all times. You really get to really learn people's eyes and where they're at with their emotions and what's going on. And with the pandemic, when people started wearing masks, I was like, oh, I know this after spending so much time with the Zapatistas in the jungles. Actually, I'm going to go back to this. This couple was so cute. I asked to photograph them and they were posing for me. And then she goes, wait. And she ran off and she came back with a plate of tortillas because their biggest passion is growing corn, coffee, and beans. So she wanted to have the tortillas in the photograph that was made from the corn that they grew. This woman is one of the mothers of the missing 43. I don't know if you guys know the story about the missing students that were kidnapped coming from Oaxaca to Mexico City for a protest. The bus they were on was pulled over and they've never been seen since. And so this woman's name is Hilda, and she goes everywhere with this poster of her son, Manuel. And the Zapatista back all the mothers of the missing 43 and will bring them to different events because they just completely support their cause. This was a rather interesting shoot. This was a commander of a platoon, went and photographed them. They had a couple hundred soldiers lined up on each side of the road, and it was one of those moments you're like, whoa, how did I get here? This was deep in the jungles of Chiapas in kind of a distant rebel compound. Also what happened too is, I didn't know it, but my vehicle took off while I was photographing. And I ended up walking in the jungle on the road by myself with limited Spanish, no money, no passport, nothing for a few hours. And then I found the vehicle. It was stuck in mud because the jungles were just really, really muddy. And I was like, yay. So I was able to get back in the van. And this is pretty much all the gear that I take. I'm pretty limited in everything I take with me. This was the last trip I did, which was traveling with the migrant caravan. Started in Tijuana. And then I ended up in Mexico City. This is Father Alejandro Solelinda. He's the rebel priest of Mexico. Actually, like the cartels have tried killing him. The government has tried killing him because he helped so many migrants. He's helped thousands and thousands of migrants, and he sets up facilities for them and takes care of them. And he's just an amazing man. Super happy guy, and just puts his life on the line for people that he just sees for a short time and gets them safe and goes on. This is in one of the compounds, and this is something that is really interesting with what I do. Because I make these cameras, I'm allowed into a lot of different places. This is inside the migrant caravan facility that Father Alejandro set up. They did not let photographers in. But because I have this art piece that connects the people, I'm welcomed in so many different times. The same thing with like when I was in Lesbos, Greece. I stayed there for months, and the camera itself, you know, the NGOs loved, the Syrian refugees connected with it. Everybody connected with it, where other photographers were not allowed in. So it just gave me this like personal connection to the people. They felt it, the people organizing felt it, and just would allow me to be in places where other photographers weren't allowed to go too. You always draw a crowd when you got a changing tent. This is the migrant caravan facility. Migrant caravan photo shoots. That's Pio. We still talk all the time. He's a Honduran. Okay. And then this was another photo shoot that I actually did local in Tucson, Arizona. There was an organization that brought me into a migrant facility here in Arizona, an ICE facility. And I did photo shoots of people in the ICE facility. And that's a scan negative. I haven't printed these yet the way, I do these 48 by 60 inch prints, but I haven't printed this one yet from the migrant facility. These are just scan negatives. What I do with all this whole project, with Us and Them project, I ask everybody to write something from their heart that I'll incorporate into the final print that I make. This was Michael's. She wrote a whole thing about how we need to take care of the earth, and it's all in Dene. Rakan, this mentions the village he's from outside of Damascus, and it says, "I miss you." He misses his village. This was just a beautiful, this gentleman spent so much time on this script, and then he wrote it in English, and it was just beautiful sediment. From Migrant Caravan, this gentleman just was about how he lost everything. And this is in Pashto, and it just says, "We love you all." Then in the dark room, this is where I make the prints, which I'll show you in a little bit. I made an easel that's 48 by 60 inches big, mounts to the wall with tempered glass and hinges. So it comes down so I can lay down paper, and then I'll make the print and develop 9 sheets of gelatin silver paper separately to make one print. This is that little boy that I photographed first. He wrote, it says on the right, because it's in Arabic, you read right from left, it says Jamal and then safety. And these are the prints from the S&M project. And each sheet too, as you could tell, I tone separately in different compounds to get different effects or different colors. And I usually leave the middle image, the middle 16 by 20 sheet of paper without any tone. There's a con, and that was shot on Type 55, so that's off the negative from the Type 55. There's the couple with their tortillas. And they wrote a whole thing about how much they just love the to grow corn and go by the 7 principles of the Zapatista. That's the commander, and there's all the soldiers you can see that I talked about that were all lined up. This gentleman in Palestine wrote a beautiful poem about how precious the rain is and the dark times are, and what you learn from the rain and the darkness. This woman, she actually just wrote a bunch of words like hope, cherish, love in Arabic. And that's the woman that was that is the dentist. And she just wrote, it says hope. And Chief Arvel Looking Horse. In Lakota, that says, we are all spiritual, we will survive. And there's Michael's finished print. So I started working on, when I was in Lesbos, gathering artifacts for the final museum installation. And one of the most amazing artifacts came to me from the mayor of Lesbos, Greece. He loved what I was doing and how I was working with the refugees. He loved Tara too. He had Tara working all over the place, thought it was just so cool that a 12-year-old girl was just putting so much time in and so much work. I was fascinated by the UN's fingerprinting room in the camp. So these buildings, this is where, when you come off the boat, you get on a bus. The bus takes you to the camp. First thing you do is you give them your paperwork. You fill out what you can. They fingerprint you and then give you an EU visa. On the way out, everybody would wipe off their fingerprints all over the building. So the mayor of Lesbos gave me that door that is on the left there for the installation. So this is the museum installation, cameras in the middle. The very top is the Godhead part. The door itself are the fingerprints of Syrian refugees after they saw humanity for the very first time. Because also they got an EU visa. They have just some rights. And after hearing the stories they went through from Syria to Turkey to smugglers in Turkey to, it was just epic. And this is the moment where they actually felt humanity. Also at the top, I think I have a closer photo coming up. There's a little sheep. In the middle is the Godhead with bullets going around. That sheep I actually found after a boatload of children came over, and all the children were taken to the camp, and that little sheep was in the breakwater. So I put that in the middle of the. This was also at the San Diego Art Institute in an exhibition in 2018. There's the camera. And there's the sheep with the bullets going around. And all those, that's all acrylic going around, and there's hundreds of pearls, which kind of felt like just human bodies or lives, floating. And then the plumb bob, which is the grounding feature. And this is the exhibition at the Art Institute in San Diego. And that's the end of the slides. Hope I didn't take too much time. I know it was over an hour.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks. Yeah.
Hopefully it wasn't boring.
No.
Let's see, I'll stop sharing. Okay. So a studio tour?
Please.
Okay. Well, I have my official camera person. She doesn't want to be on camera. So I'm in Tucson, Arizona. The studio is actually a 1930s diaper washing factory. And I love this place because the machines I use to actually make the cameras, I need a lot of power. So the washers and the dryers that they use to power had to have a lot of amperage. So this building actually has a 600 amp service with 3-phase, which will power big industrial machines that I need to actually make what I make. I'll take you into this room first. So this is a bedroom, Alana's office, and also this is a wall I use to mock things up. This is the installation you just saw. This is a new camera I'm working on now. These side pieces are really interesting. I have friends in Tijuana, and I think down a little bit. Yeah, I have friends in Tijuana, and they actually cut out sections of the U.S.-Mexico border wall with an angle grinder and shipped me these pieces. And this is for the back plate for the film holder that locks in. And then right in the middle here, it's probably hard to see, there's actually a skull that's from a pin from the Skull and Bone Society, which they probably don't like that I actually have that pin, that I'm using it for this project. And most of my camera installations, I make them so the cameras could turn, so people could actually touch them, which has been a pain in the butt with museums because museums don't want you touching anything ever. But every camera project I make it so the camera actually bolts to a bearing system so the cameras could turn so people could actually touch the work. This part down here is for us and them. These are actually bullet shells that were in a American cavalry and Indian war in New Mexico in 18 something. And there's other artifacts in this too. Also, this is all acrylic fill too, but these are actually hundreds of bullet shells that I found hiking in Arizona. People like to shoot here. And these are some of the prints. Actually, the prints itself, like I said, are 16 by 20 gelatin silver prints, each one. All 9 of them make a 48 by 60. And then I pour 5 gallons of UV acrylic resin over the top and then spend days sanding it. So it's actually a hard surface. It's a little dusty. And then what I do is I make basically a mask out of the words that were written and expose the paper over the mask and then lay down resin, and then I'll put another layer or another red words over top that, so the red letters actually float about a 1/4 inch above the print itself. Over this way, this is library and also Alana's office. My girlfriend, Alana Aratam, is a badass photographer. And she has no work here right now because actually she has a exhibition up at CPAC in Colorado for their photography festival. And another exhibition at Pentimenti Gallery in Philadelphia right now. All at the same time, but kind of a cush little office area. Bedroom, tub. Alana's going, no, don't show that. This is a shooting stage. This is a new project I'm working on that is a little edgy. I'm not going to say too much about it. But actually, why don't you come up over here?
I can't see.
So what I'm doing is I'm actually setting up the installation and just kind of laying it out.
Can you guys see?
Can you guys see? It actually has about 25 guns, actually real firearms that are going to be part of the museum installation. This is something I brought down. I think Eric Koonsman said he was going to be watching. And if he is, this is the heaviest portfolio art book I think ever made. It has a little window on the top with actually human teeth, cross. What you do is open up the top. Maybe back up a little bit. So that opens. This is a little plate here that says what it is. It's Borderlands, Wayne Belger, Camera Obscura Studies from 1998 to 2013. This is number 3 of 5. So every once in a while, I'll make one of these portfolio books. And yeah, so I got 2 more to make, which I could probably make one now and make another one in like 5 years. So you pull this up with these surgical retractors. And then there's a book of my work that I made that just has the different projects with pages I made from paper from the 1800s. So this book has every project I made up to that point. Then you pull the plate out that holds the book. And there's one print from every camera that I made up to that time. So this is from a camera called Headlights. This photo was actually in a gallery. I took it in a gallery show. So there's a couple hundred people walking around and it was a 30-second exposure. So everybody else turned to ghosts. It was on opening night, which was rather fun. Deer camera, which is one I didn't show. Yeah, this one was classic camera. And I'll just do one more, which was, this is Yimmy Ya, the underwater camera. So that is the heaviest portfolio book ever. And each one I've made too is completely different. And like the other ones that are in New York at the museum I work with. I think it's close to 100 pounds. So it's a little ridiculous. Okay, so I'll take you into the machine shop where I actually make cameras. That's the dog. So this is the shop. I've been a climber my whole life, mountaineer, so I have a lot of my backpack gear, everything ready to go if I want. Kind of into motorcycles a whole lot, so I got a few. This is, oh, maybe go to that side. These are 3 new camera projects I'm working on. This one's called Divine Proportion. It's actually kind of on hold because the Department of Energy is not a big fan of my work. Was that?
Find it.
Yeah. So this camera, and also you got to remember too, is like every single piece of this started as just a block of aluminum that I just started machining by hand. And there's hundreds of parts in this thing. This camera is pneumatic. I designed it to work in a underground particle accelerator, a 240 meter underground particle accelerator that generates 17,400 electron volts of X-ray radiation, and then comes through an 8 micron beam to do tests with. And they let me actually like play with their particle accelerator for a little bit until the Department of Energy kind of put the kibosh on it. So I got this camera that I made to use in the particle accelerator that's kind of, can't really use it. Except I heard that CERN actually has an artist residency. So I'll show you how it works. You pump it up with air. There's going to be 2 glass chambers that are made out of lead, glass, and boron that they use for X-ray rooms. And then there's a 2 micron tungsten pinhole that goes in the front. You open up the camera by hitting a switch under here. The whole camera opens up. You slide 8x10 X-ray film down in here. And then close the camera back up. And then it's in the particle accelerator in this room called the hutch that they release the radiation into. You do an exposure after it's all locked up and closed up, and then come back and open it up. Some of the artifacts in it, because the camera was to study the mythology of creation and destruction. There's the Hindu god Shiva in the back, and Shiva's standing on trinitite, which is glass formed from the very first nuclear detonation at the Trinity test site. There's an 800 meters of earth underneath the first detonation turned to green glass. So this is some of that green glass, and it's still gives off a little bit of beta, gamma, and alpha radiation from the plutonium that was used in the very first nuclear device. I like playing with a switch. It's just kind of like fun. It goes up and down. But it has 2 big air tanks, a whole bunch of gears. Rather fun. This is another project. This is the one that I'm doing the installation for in the other room. A little bit lower. This one I've been shooting a lot with most recently. Pushing the side here, loosens up the chamber for the film. That locks in. This is for the aperture gate in the front. Has actually a machine gun sight. Flip that up. The sight is right there. This has taken, say, about a year to build. And this is something new I'm working on. This is the first time I'm actually using the body of another camera. I've never used, I make everything by hand from scratch from the beginning. This is a duping machine that they used to dupe film with. It uses 35 millimeter film. I'm gonna make a pinhole movie camera. And I've been talking to, I have some friends that, actually one friend at Kodak who said, yeah, we can make you any film you want. So, it's gonna be pretty fast because it's pinhole, but I have this whole vision of what a pinhole movie would look like. And so that's what this is gonna be. Let me show you some of the machines. So all my round parts I make, like the air cylinders and pistons and everything else, are made on this machine. This is a lathe. So this cuts all the round parts. So if you want something round. So this will shave off all kinds of just metal for the round parts. So it makes it nice and pretty, and you could just take off, a few thousandths of an inch at a time. And most of these machines are pretty accurate too, as far as within a thousandths. The majority of my parts are made on this machine. This is my mill. It has an X and Y axis and also a knee that goes up and down. So I could machine parts from all different angles with this. So like I said, the majority of my part making is with this machine. And up here I have a digital readout. So it's accurate within a thousandth of an inch. And that's the mill. Back here, I got this. The horizontal saw, that's just cut up the metal to get it started to do the machining. This is another desk with all kinds of parts. This is a lot of my optical area. If I'm messing with different lenses and different parts. A lot of these are off of old military aircraft, a lot of these lenses and such. Over here, boxes of bones. Teeth. Whole box of wishbones, hundreds of wishbones. Because you never know what you're going to need. So I'm always just saving stuff.
Roadkill.
Roadkill. So I'll take you to the dark room. You ready? Yay! So this is the dark room. I have two Besslers that are my workhorses, two 4x5 Besslers. Yeah, it's kind of a basic dark room. It's actually one of my favorite places to be. I love this dark room. This is the easel I was talking about. Actually, this photo's in the way. But so it's a, this is all tempered glass, steel framed on the easel. And then so what I'll do is I'll, put down the gelatin silver paper face down. And then tape it down and tape it to the top so it doesn't slide down. And then put the whole thing back up. And then expose the image with the Bessler. And just basic stuff. I was actually just running film. So I got chemicals out right now for film. And print washer. And that's about it. Yeah. So should we do a Q&A?
Yeah, please. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's go back into the living room area where it's a little bit easier. Yeah. Hello. Yay. Is that a fun little trip?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was great. We've come full circle, it seems.
Yeah.
So, how do you, can I ask the first question, Richard?
Yes,
that
please.
okay?
Yeah, please.
How do you soak a print that size? Do they make trays that big?
Oh no, for the 48 by 60?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I make the print in, it's 9 separate sheets of paper.
Oh, I see. Okay. So,
Yeah, 16 by 20 sheets.
okay,
And then
gotcha.
what I'll do too is I'll have different developers.
Yeah.
So I'll have one that just like really pumps up contrast and gets, darks going. The other one might have just some really cool grays. So each sheet to make the one print has a different flavor or a different feel. And then what I do is I put all 9 sheets back together on a, it's this honeycomb board. It's acid free, 1-inch thick honeycomb board, and then dry mount it all together to make the image.
Okay. Is that something you have on a wall, or is it done on the floor, or how do you do that?
No, do you see that easel that I was pulling down?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the easel. So that'll lay out the 9 sheets of paper on the glass itself.
Oh,
And
great.
then put it up and then shoot through the glass, exposed through the glass. So it's a big vertical easel that holds all 9 sheets together.
Okay, I understand now. That's incredible. This must be like a warehouse that you're living in, is it?
Yeah, it's a 1930s diaper washing factory.
Is it downtown in Tucson, or?
Yeah.
Very nice. It's very well utilized, and you need a lot of space for all this equipment. So
Yeah, well, the main thing was the power. I needed a lot of power because those mills and lathes, they're big industrial machines.
oh,
And so, it's kind of hard to find a building that has that kind of power. So
yeah,
I was really lucky.
incredible. I'm blown away.
May I ask the second question?
Mhm.
Please. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
How do you choose your products? Is it kind of serendipitous, or is it something that catches your attention? And then once you've chosen that, you make the cameras?
Well, a lot of it has to do with my history, as far as the way I grew up being a punk in LA, being really political and an activist, but also with some religious background, but a lot had to do with the science background in my family. So when you put those elements together and then something happens in the world that really sparks kind of all that, I'll do a lot of research in it. When I was telling Richard and Bob about how I like extending process. Like a lot of times when I get into a project, like the S&M project, I did the very first shot I did of that little Syrian boy. From the first idea that I want to do that till when I was fully in, it took about 1.5 years almost to get my first photograph. So I have so much time to become involved in the project, to learn about it, learn about the people, learn about so much, so that when I'm there and connecting, I really have an idea of what's going on. And also, I come from a big line of academics too. My grandfather has degrees from MIT and Caltech. My aunt taught at Harvard, so my dad had a degree in aeronautical engineering. So, it's just like this whole, love to learn kind of family.
Foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you make the cameras after you've decided what you're going to do next, or?
Well, I make the cameras start coming together. Like I said, with the S&M project and different projects, a lot of the artifacts start coming because I get so involved in the research of the subject. So also I start meeting different people and start going to, different events and different things and start connecting, and then they start gelling. A lot of times I don't even know what the camera is really going to look like when I start building the camera, because it shifts and changes and morphs due to the situation, the feel of the subject, the people of the subject, and what's going on. And then that way it becomes a true representation or a connection or like a communal bridge between me and the subject.
It's gorgeous, gorgeous.
Thank you.
Wayne,
Yeah.
question, you shoot black and white film. Do you shoot color as well on your projects?
Yeah. You probably noticed, like in the underwater camera, I shoot color, and
Yeah.
also the HIV project.
Yes. Right.
I shoot color. And I'll kind of play around with it. But then, I kind of like feel what I like best. The skull camera, the Beauty of Decay project, I always shoot the interior of the house in color and the exterior in black and white. And so it's just gotten to be just something I really feel when I'm in the house. There's just all these different colors and things going on. Yeah, I just really wanted the color, and the starkness of the desert, I just wanted black and white.
Yeah.
And so it's, it just depends on how the project kind of evolves. But I love black and white because, I could do everything myself in the dark room really well. And I love playing in the dark room. It's one
And
of my favorite things.
is my voice being heard?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead,
And
Dennis.
rather than a question, can I make a statement? I almost missed this, and I am certainly glad I did not.
Well, I'm glad you're here too. Thank you.
So, Wayne, my daughter has a quick question for you, which is probably the most important one all night. She'd like to know what the name of your dog is.
Oh, it's Oakland,
There you go.
like the city. Here, he's right over here. Oakland. Hey.
Go.
Oop, whoop. Did I just hit something? Oh, wait, okay.
No, you're okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, my daughter named him. She's a big fan of the band Green Day, which is from Oakland. So his name is Oakland. And I love having a shop dog. It's because having the studio here, we spend a lot of time here, and he just cruises around, and he's just always a great companion.
Want to come?
Actually, he's in a couple of Alana's photos. He's kind of a ham when it comes to photography. If she's shooting and has a shoot set up, he'll be right there in the photo every time. So yeah, he's part of the crew.
Wayne, one other question, if I could. What accelerator did you work at?
SSRL, the radiation labs, Stanford.
Okay.
Yeah, Stanford. Oh, by the way, Eric, did you like the heavy book?
I still want an official weight. It can't be classified as the heaviest book until you give an official weight.
I don't know if you know Eric. Eric said RIT, and he is a book artist and an amazing photographer and good guy. But yeah, I was bragging to him that I made the world's heaviest book. I really think it's over 100 pounds.
Need proof.
I'll get you proof.
Hey, Wayne, I have a question for you. I'm a big fan of Peter Beard, and I'm kind of seeing some shared sympathies, especially the dedication to the subject, but also mark making, I think, is somewhat similar. Do you have, people you would consider inspirational to you? They don't have to be photographers, but, people who are kind of kindred spirits?
Yeah, I mean, like I love Chomsky. I love Nikola Tesla. Actually, have a tattoo right here that has like a star. It's actually Nikola Tesla's eye in the middle.
Oh my,
Okay.
But also Chuck Yeager. Yeah, and it's, yeah, I've done lectures before, like I did one at Eastman House. And somebody asked that, it's like, what were your inspirations, for photography? And I just listed Yeager and engineers and just basically people who really went places and pushed and pushed.
The envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really got involved, really went deep, and really were there. And then I have some like new inspirations, like I was talking about Father Alejandro Solalinda, in Mexico City, who's just helped so many migrants and put his life on the line over and over and over. Just people who they're completely selfless, just to be there, be involved, be connected, and really, do something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we have other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Terry.
I'm wondering, has corporate America ever approached you and asked you to work for them? I know that it's you're very humanitarian, and I hear so much empathy there for people, and I just kind of wonder, because I know that when you have a talent and you have a drive, it's like people see that, and I just wondered if you've ever been approached to kind of go work in that world as opposed to the artist world and being having your own free path.
No.
Really?
I've been approached, and I've kind of gone on a weird little path. I was showing in a lot of galleries in up to about 2008. And I had a couple epic things with galleries, and I was just done. And also I felt kind of weird too, because I get into this where I'm really passionate about, connecting with HIV communities. I'm really passionate about, and just really learning. And then I'm putting these pieces up and I felt it didn't feel good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And same thing with like the, Syrian refugees and, just the different projects I work on. And I had kind of an epic time in 2008. And I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to do my own thing. I don't want to show anymore. I don't want to. And I had Nathan Lyons. Nathan Lyons. He was the director of Eastman Kodak for the Eastman House for 13 years. Started the workshop.
Visual Studies Workshop.
Visual Studies Workshop. He was a big fan of my work. He saw my work at Etherton when I showed with Joel Peter Witkin. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And Nathan's like, here, come to New York. I came to New York, met with him. And he ended up setting me up with this museum called Artisan Works, where they put me on an honorarium. They pay for the studio and different things, and really made it so I didn't have to do 2 to 3 gallery shows a year to survive. And I got to completely focus on the work, and I didn't feel like I was selling like trauma porn. It was just, I got to really connect and create and connect and create. And that's how they ended up in museum installations too, because it was more geared to do a museum installation than like gallery shows. And so I felt better than that. And then, then I go and hang out with Zapatistas, and they're anti-capitalists. So ended up picking up a lot of their like feel, and I think that's why they like me a lot too. Is I'm not there to make a profit off of their image, and but it's it's kind of an interesting place right now too, though, because Alana shows in a lot of galleries and stuff, and I'm like, it was kind of fun showing in galleries, but I don't want to do the maybe have like a subset or something, because a lot of those big prints are all one-offs. Sometimes there's a 2, sometimes a 3, but for the majority of them, no. But I was thinking of making maybe some smaller prints and actually doing some shows, because I'd like to see the work get out there and be seen more.
And would you appreciate it if people owned your work and were proud of your work?
Oh yeah, people do own the work. I've turned down some people
Okay.
that wanted to buy it because I didn't feel good about them owning it, and I know how I feel about it. But it's like some people, like there's a collector named Billy Shire in Los Angeles. He owns La Luz de Jesus Gallery. He's passionate about my work for the last 20 years. You know, he's owned my work. And I just love his passion and connection for it. And you see him look at things, he's just like, oh, you know, it's just that the way I look at it, you know. So I really feel when, you know, somebody has that kind of connection, it's just like, yeah, let's share. So yeah, a lot of my work is owned by, you know, different collectors, but collectors I'm friends with, you know, people that, you know, that get it, I guess, and really, really like it. You know, which it's a really bad business model for an artist, you know, but Alana's over there shaking her head. Yes, it's a bad business model for an artist. But, you know, I didn't plan on being an artist. You know, that was another little story I didn't tell is this all came about accidentally when I started making my cameras. And then a gallery in Los Angeles was like, could I show these? And I said, well, why? You know, these are just things I like making for me. And they went and I said, okay. They went and showed them at the gallery. And then LA Times Magazine did a huge write-up on it. And I thought, well, maybe I'll follow this direction. And then, you know, it got bigger and bigger. Then it was gallery show after gallery show after gallery show. And it felt like I ended up spending the majority of my time gearing up for gallery shows rather than shooting, creating, making, experiencing. Because I mean, if you know, I'm going to be doing a lot of gallery shows, I can't spend 2 months in Lesbos. You know, I can't spend 2 months in Standing Rock. You know, it's you know, if your income is totally geared for that, you got to be in and out, you know. And so yeah, so Nathan Lyons set me up nicely. But I do kind of want to shift, I think, a little bit. Because yeah, everything's in this one museum in Rochester. I kind of want to get it out and seen by more people now.
Good idea.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Anytime.
I have a question, Wayne.
Uh-huh.
I just keep thinking about the communities that you're working with and the issues that are ongoing. And I'm wondering if you see your work as with those communities as being finished, or are those possible projects that you could revisit?
Oh no, they keep going. All my cameras, the ones that are owned by collectors, I have a deal with them and a contract with them that I could take back the camera anytime I feel like.
That's great.
And so I'll keep on using it. Like the Third Eye camera, the Beauty of Decay one, that's actually a documentary that's hitting. There's a documentary on that camera project called The Beauty of Decay, and it's going to be in the film festival circuit this year. But that camera project, it was actually bought by Billy Shire, the collector I told you about, in I think like 2003 or 2004 or something like that. I still use it really consistently, but it's kind of a cool deal though. The camera owner for now on gets the #2 print for free if I use the camera. So if I'm out shooting and I create like 3 images I really like, they'll get 3 images for free. Because, and Billy Shire's ended up with like probably 40 images since he bought the camera. He probably has more, has more in images than he actually paid for the whole camera project in 2003. Just the value of the prints.
That's
But,
great. I'm really glad that the projects are ongoing. That's good.
Oh,
to
they always will be. Yeah.
Good.
And what I like too is like when I was first showing paintings, you know, you know, somebody would buy a painting and it would be like, okay, the painting's gone. With my collectors of the cameras, we have this ongoing relationship that just keeps on going and going and going and going. I even like with the guy who bought the underwater camera, we've been on scuba dives together. You know, we both go and we both scuba dive and I'm shooting with the camera and it's been a really cool relationship with my collectors.
That's great.
Pretty
It's
fun.
kinda
I
like,
people, so it works well.
Kind of like you have visitation rights with the cameras.
I know. It's funny. It's like I was talking to another friend of mine who was an artist, and he's like, okay, wait, let me get this right. You sell your work and then you take it back. And I'm like, yeah, kind of, but and it's neat too, because you know, then the installation keeps on changing. You know, like when like the exhibition I did at the TAM in Los Angeles, it was a brand new installation that's never been seen before. And like I said, yeah, that project was sold in 2003. And at the TAM, there was brand new prints that I shot.
Very
And it's, yeah, so it just keeps on rolling and evolving. And I feel like with the subject and the project, I'm evolving along with it. You know, I learn more and more and more as I, you know, get deeper and deeper into the subject, because I get to keep on using the camera that's, you know, designed for it. It's something different. It's a little.
Yeah.
but it's,
Are there other questions?
Bueller.
Well, I think if there are no other questions, Wayne, that was fantastic. That was really, really great. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing some of what you do and your space and your time. And,
it was fun. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think if no one else has a question, we'll leave it there. And thanks so much. That was just.
Thank you, Richard, for setting this up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank
One
you.
other thing too. Yeah, if anybody wants to see the work too, the website's pretty easy. It's waynemartinbelger.com.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. It was fantastic.
Wayne, I'll email you about a recording.
Okay, great. Yeah, because there's a couple people that would like that. So thank you so much.
Very
you.
cool, Wayne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for coming.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.